Welcome to the deep dive on the All Sorts podcast, where we, plunge into a sea of information and resurface with those pearls of wisdom. Today, we're exploring a story of grit and determination.
Yeah.
The fight for fair compensation for WASPI women in the UK.
Right.
You've likely seen headlines about their campaign.
Yeah.
But we're going, beyond the surface to uncover the heart of their struggle.
Absolutely.
And understand why it matters for all of us.
Well, what's fascinating about this deep dive is that it's not just about pensions.
Right.
It's about the impact of government policy on individual lives.
Yeah.
The importance of clear communication and the question of who ultimately bears responsibility when things go wrong.
And adding to the urgency, Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, just dropped a major announcement about compensation for these women.
Huge.
We'll unpack that and explore what it means for the WASPI campaign.
Okay.
But first, let's rewind to understand how this all began.
The story starts with the 1995 Pensions Act.
Okay.
A piece of legislation that at first glance appeared to promote equality. Its goal was to equalize the state pension age for men and women, gradually raising it from 60 to 65 for women by 2020.
Equalization sounds fair on the surface.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But what makes this so interesting is that the 1995 Act, while aiming for equality, inadvertently created a ripple effect that hit a specific generation of women particularly hard.
Okay, let's dive deeper into that.
Sure.
How did things take a turn?
Fast forward to 2011.
Okay.
And a new Pensions Act accelerated this timetable, requiring women to reach 65 by 2018 instead.
Oh, wow.
Suddenly, those nearing retirement had their plans thrown into disarray.
I can imagine the shockwaves this sent through the lives of women who were expecting to retire at 60.
Absolutely.
Did they just accept this change quietly?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
This is where the WASPI movement, Women Against State Pension Inequality, was born. Their argument was that while equalizing the pension age was generally accepted, the speed of these changes left many women without adequate time to adjust their plans. They felt blindsided.
It makes you think about the human impact of these decisions.
For sure.
We're talking about livelihoods, dreams, and years of careful planning potentially upended.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Imagine budgeting for a trip you've been saving for years and suddenly finding out the cost has doubled overnight with no time to adjust.
Right.
That's the kind of disruption these women faced.
Wow.
But on a much larger scale, involving their entire retirement.
And to be clear, we're talking about women born between 1950 and 1960, right?
Precisely.
They're the ones caught in this transition, right, when the rules change.
This wasn't just a theoretical policy debate. It had tangible consequences, forcing many women to delay retirement, deplete their savings, or even fall into debt. We're talking about a generation who played by the rules and felt let down by the system they trusted.
It sounds like a massive breach of trust. Did anyone investigate these claims of unfair treatment?
Yes. The Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman, PHSO, launched an independent investigation into the complaints from WASPI women. Their findings were pretty damning.
What did the investigation reveal? Was there any wrongdoing on the government's part?
The ombudsman concluded that the Department for Work and Pensions, the DWP, had failed to adequately communicate these changes.
So it wasn't just about sending a letter?
It wasn't just about sending a letter. It was about providing clear information and giving women enough time to adapt.
So basically, they dropped the ball on something that has huge implications for people's lives.
Yes. And they even use the term maladministration, which essentially means the DWP acted improperly. Not necessarily illegally, but in a way that caused avoidable harm to these women. The ombudsman recommended compensation between £1,000 and £2,950 per woman to acknowledge the hardship caused.
So that brings us to Liz Kendall's recent announcement.
Yes.
What did she decide?
In a move that shocked many,
the
government decided not to provide any financial compensation to WASPI women.
Wow.
They argued that most women were aware of the changes and that earlier letters wouldn't have made a difference.
But as we've discussed, awareness doesn't necessarily equal understanding or the ability to adjust.
Right.
It feels like a dismissal of the very real hardship these women faced.
And that's precisely what many are arguing.
Yeah.
While the government points to surveys suggesting awareness, critics argue that even if women knew about the impending change, the accelerated timeline didn't give them sufficient time to adapt.
Right.
For many, it felt like a betrayal of trust and a disregard for their years of contribution.
So on one hand, we have the government prioritizing financial responsibility.
Right.
And on the other, we have a generation of women pleading for fairness and recognition.
Exactly.
What a difficult dilemma.
It certainly highlights the complexities of policymaking.
Yeah.
Balancing the needs of individuals with the realities of budget constraints is never easy.
Right.
But it also raises fundamental questions about accountability, transparency, and the government's responsibility to protect its citizens from avoidable harm.
Right.
This is where the fight for fair compensation truly begins.
It's a story that has captivated the nation and sparked a much-needed conversation about the impact of government decisions on everyday lives.
Absolutely.
But it's far from over.
It's just beginning.
Now let's take a closer look at the political fallout from Liz Kendall's announcement and how the WASPI women are responding to this setback.
Let's do it. Liz Kendall's announcement landed like a bombshell in the political landscape, creating shockwaves that are still reverberating.
It's fascinating how this issue has become such a political hot potato, exposing divisions even within the Labor Party itself.
Exactly. You see, this was a policy initially enacted by a conservative government, but Labor, under Jeremy Corbyn, had pledged to compensate WI women if they came to power.
Right.
It was a key part of their platform.
Yeah.
So many labor supporters feel like the current government has abandoned a core promise.
It does make you wonder about the political calculations at play.
Absolutely.
A labor politician essentially defending a conservative policy creates a tricky situation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The opposition parties haven't missed this opportunity.
Right.
They're portraying labor as out of touch with working women, accusing them of hypocrisy and a lack of compassion. The airwaves are buzzing with terms like shameful, disgraceful, and betrayal to describe the government's stance.
It sounds like a PR nightmare for the Labor Party. But what about the WASPI women themselves?
Right.
How are they reacting to this decision?
They're not mincing words, I can tell you that.
Okay.
They see this as a blatant disregard for their struggles and feel like their voices haven't been truly heard.
Yeah.
One campaigner I read about used the phrase adding insult to injury.
Right.
Highlighting the feeling that the government is simply dismissing their concerns after years of campaigning and sharing their stories.
It's understandable why they feel so strongly.
Yeah.
This goes beyond just the financial aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about feeling valued and respected by the system they've contributed to for so long.
Precisely. This situation speaks volumes about the importance of trust in government.
Yeah.
When people feel like their leaders aren't listening or acting in their best interests.
Right.
That trust crumbles.
Yeah.
Rebuilding it becomes a monumental task.
This whole situation raises a fundamental question.
Yeah.
If you can't trust the government to do right by its citizens,
Right.
especially those who've played by the rules,
Right.
then who can you trust?
Right.
It makes you question the very foundation of the social contract.
It's a profound question that goes beyond the WASPI issue itself.
Right.
It touches upon the broader role of government,
Yeah.
the need for accountability, and the importance of empathy when crafting policies that impact people's lives.
It's a stark reminder that behind every policy decision,
Yes.
behind every statistic,
Absolutely.
there are human beings whose lives are directly affected.
People with hopes, dreams, and aspirations.
Right.
Their stories deserve to be heard, even when governments face difficult financial choices.
So with this decision sparking political firestorms and the WASPI women feeling more determined than ever,
Yes.
what's next? What are their options at this point?
Well, they're exploring legal challenges,
Okay.
examining whether the government's refusal to compensate violates any legal obligations or human rights. It's possible this could end up in court.
So there's a chance the courts could force the government's hand. That would be a dramatic turn of events.
It's certainly within the realm of possibility if the WASPI women can demonstrate that the government acted unlawfully or unfairly.
Right.
They might secure some form of redress through the legal system.
What about applying pressure through Parliament?
Yeah.
Could that lead to a change of heart?
It's definitely a strategy they're pursuing. Remember, there's considerable support for the WASPI women within Parliament itself,
Yeah.
even among some Labor MPs who disagree with the government's stance.
Right.
We could see more debates, more questions raised,
Yeah.
more pressure mounting on the government to reconsider.
That's encouraging.
Yes.
It shows that the fight is far from over. What other strategies are they employing?
Public awareness campaigns have been a cornerstone of the WASPI movement.
Right.
They've been incredibly effective at getting their message out there, rallying public support, and putting pressure on the government.
Right.
The protests, letters to MPs, sharing their stories with the media, using social media to connect and amplify their voices. It's a true grassroots effort.
It's inspiring to see their dedication and resourcefulness.
It is.
They've turned their frustration into a powerful force for change.
And that's what's so remarkable about grassroots activism.
Yeah.
It can sway public opinion, force those in power to pay attention, and ultimately it can lead to real change.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in the face of a seemingly immovable obstacle, we all have a voice, and collective action can make a difference.
The WASPI women are embodying the spirit of resilience.
They are.
Demonstrating that sometimes achieving fairness requires challenging the status quo and refusing to back down, even when the odds seem stacked against you.
Their story is a powerful testament to the importance of persistence, solidarity, and the enduring hope for a more just and equitable society.
Well, let's shift gears a bit and delve into the financial arguments surrounding this issue. After all, money is at the heart of the debate.
Absolutely. The government's main argument against compensation, as we've discussed, is the cost.
Right.
They've put a hefty price tag on it, upwards of $10.5 billion.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a considerable sum, even for a government budget.
Right, but the WASPI women and their supporters argue that this cost is justifiable considering the circumstances.
Exactly. They contend that the government's own missteps caused very real financial hardship for many of these women.
Right.
They believe it's only fair for the government to take responsibility and provide financial redress for the harm they inflicted.
So we're essentially witnessing a clash of values.
We are.
Fiscal responsibility versus social justice.
That's right.
It's a dilemma that governments often grapple with.
For sure.
How to balance the need for sound financial management with the obligation to support those who've been negatively affected by their actions.
It's a classic balancing act with no easy answers.
Right.
Let's unpack both sides of this financial argument a bit further.
Okay.
First, let's consider the government's perspective.
Okay.
What are their primary concerns about shelling out billions in compensation?
I'm all ears. Let's break down their reasoning.
Well, for starters, $10.5 billion isn't chump change. It's a significant chunk of taxpayer funds that could be allocated to other pressing priorities like healthcare, education, or infrastructure.
Right. There's the concept of opportunity cost.
Yes.
If you spend money on one thing,
you
can't spend it on something else.
Exactly.
It's about making tough choices with limited resources.
Exactly. The government argues that using such a large sum to compensate WASPI women would necessitate cuts elsewhere or tax increases, neither of which are particularly appealing options for any politician facing an election.
And then there's the fear of setting a precedent.
Yes.
If they compensate WASPI women, what's to stop other groups from demanding similar treatment down the line? It could open a Pandora's box of financial obligations.
That's a valid concern from their perspective. They worry about a domino effect, a potential flood of future compensation claims that could strain public finances to a breaking point.
So it's not just about the WASPI women themselves. It's about the potential ripple effects and long-term implications of such a decision.
Precisely. They're taking a broader view, considering the potential consequences for the entire system.
And there's also the argument that compensating WASPI women could be perceived as unfair to other taxpayers who didn't benefit from the earlier state pension age.
That's right.
It raises questions about equity and who deserves financial support.
That's a perspective often voiced by those who oppose compensation. It's about maintaining a level playing field and ensuring fairness across the board.
So the government's position boils down to, we understand your hardship.
Yes.
But we have to weigh the financial implications and consider the broader impact on all taxpayers.
That's right.
It's a tough stance to take.
It is.
But one that prioritizes fiscal prudence.
It's a pragmatic approach, but one that doesn't sit well with those who believe justice demands more than just balancing the books.
Now let's flip the coin and hear the counter-arguments from the WASPI women and their supporters. Why do they believe compensation is justified, despite the cost?
They make a compelling case.
Okay.
Their core argument is that the government's own mishandling of this situation caused direct and measurable financial harm.
Right.
They point to the fact that many women were forced to raid their savings, take on debt, or delay retirement because of the inadequate notice they received.
So for them, it's not just an abstract concept of hardship.
It's not.
It's about concrete financial losses that they can directly attribute to the government's actions.
Precisely. And they're quick to point out that the government has compensated other groups in the past for similar injustices.
Okay.
Precedent cuts both ways, they argue.
So they're calling the government out on its own history.
Yes.
Saying, if you compensated those groups, why not us?
Exactly.
It's a powerful way to leverage past actions to support their cause.
Exactly. They cite examples like the compensation paid to victims of the Post Office Horizon scandal or the infected blood scandal, demonstrating that the government has acknowledged and rectified past mistakes with financial remedies.
So they're essentially saying,
yes,
if you can compensate those groups, why not us?
Precisely.
It's a strong point.
Yes.
What other arguments are they making?
They also contend that the cost of compensation, while significant, is dwarfed by the overall size of the UK economy.
Okay.
They argue that $10.5 billion, though a considerable sum, represents a tiny fraction of the UK's annual GDP.
It's about putting the cost into perspective.
Yes.
Arguing that it's a relatively small price to pay for fairness and justice.
Exactly. They're framing it as an investment in rectifying wrong, an investment in restoring trust in the government.
And they also highlight that not all WASPI women would receive the full amount of compensation.
That's right.
The ombudsman recommended a sliding scale based on the level of hardship experienced, meaning the actual cost could be less than the government's initial estimate.
Right. They're pointing out that the government's projections might be inflated, and a more nuanced approach could mitigate the financial burden.
So we have two competing narratives here.
We do.
The government emphasizes fiscal responsibility and avoiding a precedent.
Yes.
While the WASPI women focus on the tangible harm they've suffered and the government's past actions in similar cases.
That's right.
It's a classic clash of values that exposes the difficult decisions policymakers face.
It's a constant tug of war between competing interests and priorities.
Yeah.
Every decision has costs and benefits, and those in power must weigh them carefully, knowing that even the best choice might not satisfy everyone.
This particular decision has certainly ruffled a lot of feathers, as we've seen from the political fallout and the unwavering determination of the WASPI women.
The WASPI issue has become a lightning rod, sparking a wider debate about intergenerational fairness, the role of government, and the importance of accountability.
It's a potent reminder that public policy decisions aren't just abstract concepts debated in ivory towers.
They're not.
They have real-world consequences that impact the lives of everyday people.
They do.
We need to recognize the human cost of these decisions and ensure that no one is left behind.
Now, let's move beyond the financial arguments and political maneuvering to explore the heart of this issue.
Okay.
The personal stories of the WASPI women.
Yes.
Let's hear their voices, understand their experiences, and grasp the human impact of this policy change.
Absolutely. Let's put faces and names to the statistics and connect with the individuals whose lives have been turned upside down by these pension reforms. One of the most impactful aspects of the WASPI campaign has been the willingness of these women to share their personal stories.
Absolutely.
Putting a human face on what can often feel like an abstract policy debate.
It's one thing to discuss statistics and legal arguments. But it's quite another to hear firsthand accounts from women whose lives have been directly upended by these pension changes. It adds a layer of depth and understanding that simply can't be captured in policy documents.
Absolutely. When you hear about a woman like Jean, who had to postpone her retirement by 5 years and take on extra work just to make ends meet, it really hits home.
It does.
These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet.
No.
These are real people with real struggles.
Absolutely.
And their stories need to be heard.
And it's not solely about financial hardship. It's about the emotional toll this has taken. Many women feel betrayed, angry, and disillusioned with the government. They've worked hard all their lives, contributed to society, and now they feel like they've been treated unfairly by the very system they believed in.
I read about a woman named Margaret who was forced to sell her home because she could no longer afford the mortgage without her anticipated pension income.
Oh, wow.
It's heartbreaking to think about the sacrifices these women have had to make through no fault of their own.
One woman I came across described it as a profound breach of trust. She said she always believed the government would honor its commitments.
Right.
But now she feels utterly let down.
Yeah.
That sense of betrayal can be incredibly difficult to process.
And the ripple effects extend beyond the women themselves.
Absolutely.
Many have had to rely on their children or other family members for financial support.
Right.
Which can strain relationships and create resentment.
Yeah.
It's a burden that shouldn't have to be borne by families who are already stretched thin.
It highlights how these policy decisions can have unintended consequences that reverberate through families and communities.
Right.
But amidst the hardship and disappointment,
Yeah.
there's also a remarkable sense of resilience and determination among these women.
Yeah, that's what's truly inspiring.
It is inspiring.
They haven't given up.
No?
They've organized, protected, lobbied their MPs,
Yeah.
and shared their stories with anyone who would listen.
Right.
They've turned their anger and frustration into a powerful force for change, refusing to be silenced.
They've formed support groups, offering each other advice and encouragement.
Right.
Creating a sense of community around their shared experience.
Yeah.
That camaraderie has been crucial, providing strength,
Right.
a platform to voice their concerns,
Yeah.
and a glimmer of hope that they can make a difference.
One woman I spoke with put it beautifully.
Ah.
We're not going away.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to keep fighting until we get justice.
Wow.
That fighting spirit is contagious.
It is.
It's inspired others to join their cause and amplify their message,
Right.
creating a movement that extends far beyond those directly affected.
And it's important to remember that these women aren't just fighting for themselves.
Right.
They're fighting for future generations as well.
Yeah.
Determined to ensure that other women don't face the same hardship and injustice they've endured.
They're raising awareness about the importance of financial planning,
Yes.
advocating for better communication from the government,
Absolutely.
and pushing for policies that protect the rights of women in retirement.
Right.
They're transforming their personal struggles into a broader movement for social change,
Absolutely.
leaving a lasting legacy that extends far beyond their individual circumstances.
Even if they don't achieve all of their goals,
Yeah.
they've already made a significant impact.
Right.
They've put the issue of women's pensions on the political agenda, forced the government to acknowledge its shortcomings, and inspired countless others to stand up for their rights.
Right.
It's a testament to the power of collective action and the unwavering belief that a more just and equitable society is possible.
Their stories are truly a testament to the human spirit.
They are.
They showcase the power of resilience and remind us that even in the face of adversity, hope endures.
It does.
These women have shown us that it's always worth fighting for what you believe in, especially when it comes to fairness and dignity.
Their stories are a call to action for all of us, urging us to stay informed, engage in the political process, and hold our leaders accountable. The fight for justice and equality is an ongoing process. And the WASPI women have shown us that we all have a role to play in shaping a better future.
Now, as we emerge from the depths of this deep dive into the WASPI women's fight for fair compensation, let's take a moment to appreciate the power of storytelling, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of justice.
Well said.
Their story reminds us that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when they unite around a common purpose.
It's a tale that underscores the interconnectedness of our lives and the importance of holding those in power accountable for their decisions.
The fight for fairness and dignity is a marathon, not a sprint.
That's right.
And the WASPI women are showing us all how to pace ourselves, stay hydrated, and keep our eyes on the finish line.
Yes.
We've reached the end of this deep dive, but the conversation doesn't have to stop here.
It doesn't.
We encourage you to continue exploring the WASPI issue. Engage in thoughtful discussions and consider the broader implications for our society.
Right.
What resonated with you the most?
Yes.
What questions are still lingering in your mind?
The WASPI story is a powerful reminder that each of us has a voice and a responsibility to use it to advocate for a fairer and more just world.
And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, and you're eager to explore more fascinating topics, we invite you to embark on a journey of discovery with the All Sorts podcast.
We've got a treasure trove of episodes waiting for you, covering everything from the mysteries of the cosmos to the latest advancements in artificial intelligence.
Right.
Imagine it like a personalized library of knowledge delivered straight to your ears, expertly curated by yours truly.
We delve into the intricate world of quantum physics,
Yes.
unravel the secrets of ancient civilizations, and even explore the history of cheese.
The history of cheese.
Yes, cheese.
We love cheese.
We're confident you'll find something to pique your interest and ignite your imagination.
Absolutely.
To embark on this adventure,
Hey, guys.
simply search for All Sorts Podcast on your favorite podcast platform.
It's like having a backstage pass to the most captivating conversations happening across the globe.
And to stay connected with us beyond the podcast, we invite you to join our vibrant community on X, Instagram, and Threads.
Yes.
Think of it as a digital campfire where we gather to share behind-the-scenes glimpses, bonus content, and thought-provoking questions.
It's a space where curiosity reigns supreme and knowledge flows freely.
Yes.
So come join us, dear listener, and let's continue this journey of exploration together.
Remember, the world is a vast and wondrous place, brimming with stories waiting to be uncovered.
It is.
So go forth, be curious, and never stop learning.
Never stop.
We'll catch you on the next episode of All Sorts Podcast.
Farewell, and until next time, may your days be filled with wonder and your mind abuzz with newfound knowledge.